parasite has infected your band. Sustained exposure to a particular sound triggers copulation. The resulting larva then feast in the host lungs. The particular sound is words.
Mission 29, Metallic Archaea. As Pequod approaches the clouds, the brown clouds approaching them, Snake closed the chopper door. However, the smoke was not only getting through small holes in the chopper, but the chopper also began to rust at an accelerated rate. Suddenly, Pequod, the pilot, is hit with something and seems like he dies. But does he? Snake attempts to take control of the chopper, but it's no good. It begins to fall down as skulls are seen outside of the window of the chopper. After spinning in the air for a few seconds, the chopper finally hits the ground and crashes. This brings back good times. Snake gets out of the wreckage and finds Codetalker still alive, somehow. Snake starts to carry Codetalker out of the wrecked chopper when he notices the skulls surrounding him, along with some zombie-like soldiers around him, just like the first few times. They never quite explained that. Anyways, the skulls begin to surround Snake, and Snake is forced to fight them off. After a battle with 4 more skulls, yeah, not much originality in terms of bosses in this game, Kaz sends another support chopper to rescue Snake and Codetalker. Snake gets in the chopper with Codetalker. On the way to motherbase, Codetalker tells Snake and Ocelot that Skullface is no longer in Africa, and that the nuclear test was a success. However, this confuses Kaz, as the satellites didn't read anything that would resemble a nuke. Codetalker explains that the detonation test happened 5 years ago. However, this test, the test he was talking about, was a test to prevent detonation. Skullface's plan is to sell nuclear weapons that he can control, deciding whether or not they actually blow up. He's attempting to avoid detection by exporting minerals with a tiny amount of uranium in the form of metallic Archaea. This helps him avoid any unwanted attention, as that amount of uranium, as Kaz said, with a yellow cake, is not enough to make a nuke. However, the metallic Archaea can enrich the uranium on site and weaponize it. Having this much leeway to selling nuclear arms will ensure that any small militia can become a nuclear power. And he attempts to use it on Sahelanthropus. This is why he needed to test that he can control the nukes at any time from anywhere, so he can spread them at will, but make sure that they don't hit any targets he doesn't approve, namely him. And just like Kaz said, this scenario would make normal nukes irrelevant, politically and economically, meaning that, as Ocelot said, the 2 superpowers become powerless. When they get back to Mother Base, they take Codetalker to the quarantine platform. When asked for his opinion, Codetalker says that everyone has clear symptoms of the vocal cord parasite, and that the language they are tuned to is Kikongo. Codetalker gets to work ASAP on cultivating more of the Wolbachia that turns the parasites from male to female, injecting it into any and all soldiers in order to avoid further spread. Even those who don't speak Kikongo, since they couldn't be sure that they were only dealing with one strain. 2 days and many deaths later, the epidemic is done. However, this only makes Kaz's anger and hate grow deeper, saying that Skullface will pay for this. Later, Kaz and Ocelot interview Huey again. Ocelot threatens Huey by using a sample of the same metallic Archaea that the skulls use to rust equipment, but in liquid form. That's what that brown cloud was when the skulls attacked Snake in the helicopter. He first reminds Huey that his metal legs are made of titanium all the way to the femur, because his metal legs are injected straight into his bones in order to make him walk. After reminding him of this simple fact, he takes Huey's glasses, which are also made of steel, and drips some of the liquid into the metal part, and they begin to disintegrate. So the message seems clear at this point. Ocelot asks Huey where Sahelanthropus is, and he, as always, plays dumbs. After explaining that Skullface wants to put the world in a perpetual state of deterrence by having every nation own nukes, Kaz says that he knows his true objective is having the only usable weapon of mass destruction, that being the vocal cord parasites. So Ocelot threatens Huey again by dripping more metallic Archaea on his chair, which causes Huey to fall over. He then puts the syringe over Huey's metallic legs, at which point he finally breaks. He tells them that Sahelanthropus is at OKB-0, beyond the Soviet base camp, in a lab built by the Soviet philosophers. Wow, the philosophers didn't think they'd be back in the story. He then reminds Ocelot and Kaz that Sahelanthropus was not designed to accommodate a human pilot, though we have learned that this doesn't seem to matter for some reason. Before walking away, Ocelot puts the syringe under Huey's leg facing up, forcing Huey to keep his strength up so he doesn't squeeze the metallic Archaea into himself. Why? Because tortures are fun. Outside of Mother Base, Snake is ready to take on Skullface. Kaz informs him that all the men from the Soviet base camp are dead, most likely from the parasite, and he tells him where his target is, OKB-0. Snake, probably for the first time ever, says that he's going to need some backup, getting on his chopper and heading off. To be continued once again. Cassette tapes. According to Ocelot, the name OKB is used for weapons research labs in the Soviet Union. However, the number following them are always integers above 1, much like OKB 812 and OKB 754, Granny's research facility and Sokolov's research facility, respectively, from Metal Gear Solid 3. The fact that this one is named OKB-0 makes Ocelot believe that Skullface just picked a fake name that would fit the Soviets' pattern, meaning it's not really an official Soviet weapons lab. In a separate tape, Codetalker reveals that he is harboring this, the one that covers strain of his parasites in his own body, which is how he managed to live for so long, and maybe how he managed to survive the helicopter crash. He also explains that the parasites let off moisture faster than humans. This is why there is always so much mist when they are around. They give off salt in order to condense water vapors and keep themselves hydrated. This gives the impression of a mist. However, they will eventually dry out the atmosphere until no more mist can be produced, meaning they will eventually become dehydrated. Becoming dehydrated leaves them in a state of suspended animation. However, the same will happen if they get too much water. When they encounter too much water, like rain, the parasites abandon all function in their eagerness to drink. Huh. Much like Quiet.
She's okay. She just can't move when she's taking in water.
A conversation between Codetalker, Ocelot, and Kaz reveals that the way the infection got into Mother Base was through the children they rescued from Walayamasa, the village close to the oil field. Codetalker asks him if they burnt their clothes, and Kaz tells him that they were just kids and they weren't showing any symptoms anyways. But according to Codetalker, the parasites don't infect prepubescent hosts, since their vocal cords aren't fully developed, and that they could have carried parasite eggs on their clothes. This would later start to explain a few things. Kaz becomes worried as he believes some of the kids may be close to hitting puberty, so they could soon get infected. On a following tape, Ocelot asks Codetalker why the name Walayamasa got his attention. He tells him that Cypher used that region to experiment with the parasite transmission, and they used, you guessed it, the Kikongo strain. The proving grounds were the settlements upstream of Walayamasa. Apparently, they used these villages because they didn't want word of the parasite to get out before they were used, so they were planning on burning down the whole village after their experiment, living and dead. Since the village was so close to the oil field, it was already covered in oil, so nobody would dig too far into why the village would have caught fire. Codetalker goes on to explain that stopping the spread of the infection became more difficult because the dry season was over. So when they tried burning the corpses, they became waterlogged and wouldn't burn all the way. And the corpses still had eggs. So when they made contact with the river, which had swelled, the larvae washed downstream, causing anyone who drank the water to become infected, which is why Walayamasa became infected. However, Codetalker said that he told that he told Skullface of the dangers of something like this happening, but Skullface told him that they were prepared for anything. And this is when it all hits Kaz. The oil leak from the first mission Snake took on in Africa was caused on purpose in order to prevent the villagers from using the water. However, the oil flow was stopped thanks to yours truly. So the people started using the water again, along with the PF soldiers in the villages, who were locals that spoke Kikongo. They all got infected, and the kids survived because the parasites don't infect children. So the truth is, Snake, Kaz, and Ocelot were all responsible for the deaths of a whole village, making a bunch of child soldiers orphans, Eli's uprising, and even the infection of Motherbase. Another tape reveals that Skullface tested the parasites in Afghanistan as well. The test was a success, and the result was the Pashtun-speaking Mujahideen being wiped out, which explained what happened to them during the Where the Beast Sleep mission, where every Mujahideen died except for the mute one. A number of cassette tapes reveal that a lot of Codetalkers' research for the one that covers strain of the parasites was made possible by experimenting on the body of parts left over of a man who had similar abilities thanks to a strain of the vocal cord parasite. This man died in an explosion, which is why he needed parts of his body and not his whole body. And his abilities were that he could camouflage himself at will, run at high speeds, have high stamina, live for a long time, recover his stamina in a way much like photosynthesis. If it wasn't clear yet, this man was indeed the End from Metal Gear Solid 3. Mission 30, Skullface. Snake makes his way to the Soviet base camp on a chopper while Kaz, Huey, and two other soldiers follow along inside another chopper. A chopper which apparently Eli managed to sneak inside of, so he's there too now. On his way to OKB-0, which looks like a freaking medieval castle, Huey tries to sway you into thinking he's on your side by saying that he'll do what needs to be done to help you in order to prove that he's always been your ally. After making his way through 3 gates of the heavily fortified and armed XOF fortress that is OKB-0, Snake finally makes it to a staircase that led him to the helipad where Skullface is. On his way up, Kaz notices that Skullface's chopper has arrived, so he tells Snake to hurry. When he reaches the top, he can see the helicopter with the floating kid is right next to it. He blocks anything you may throw at the helicopter. When Snake reaches the helipad, Skullface is entering the helicopter with his men inside of it. Then suddenly the floating kid appears in front of Snake, and when he disappears, Skullface has already noticed him. He tells his men to stand down and gives Snake an overly dramatic speech with a trippy camera.
You hope hatred might someday replace the pain, but it never goes away. It makes a man hideous, inside and out. Wouldn't you agree?
He pretty much says that they're both the same. Typical. Because of this, Skullface tells Snake that he will show him his quote-unquote demon, and then tells him to follow him. Kaz, wanting revenge on Skullface for so long, says yeah, that's cool, just follow him, because apparently he won't attack, because he doesn't want a war on his hands. And if he does anything, they will be ready to attack. Okay, let's be honest. This was a bullshit reason to let Skullface have his moment. There's no way someone as angry as Kaz would have just said, yeah, cool, that's cool, just follow him and listen to him. No. Anyways, Snake follows Skullface down an elevator and into a jeep. During this trip, Skullface says many things, and Snake says nothing. At all. Skullface tells Snake that whatever the Navajo, that being Codetalker, told him is not true, and that the way he will do things will turn out differently. According to Skullface, he has known Big Boss since his time in America. He was kind of his cleanup crew. After every mission, he worked in the shadows, cleaning up his messes and such. He told Snake that after Operation Snake Eater, and the information he brought back about what really happened with the boss, their futures had essentially been written in stone. It was at that moment that David, or Major Zero, came to Skullface with an idea. He said,
And then the Major came to me with an idea. Washington doesn't know how to spend money, he said. I'd like to redirect it.
This was essentially when the idea of Cypher came about. At first, his goal was to make a secret organization dedicated solely to supporting America. And the rest, as they say, is history. That's when the search for the other half of the Philosopher's legacy started, the recruiting of Viva, and Ocelot, and everybody else. Everything. That's where it all started. To Zero, it was a way of avenging the boss. The revenge would be cast down on the world as a whole, but mainly on America. Zero tried to forge a single consciousness for and out of America, making people use free will to unite behind their country. However, Zero believed that this kind of control and power could not be entrusted to just one person, so he devised a system to manipulate the subconscious using words. At this point, Snake and the man who destroyed his home 9 years ago, killed almost all of his men, was the cause of him losing an arm, walking around with a horn, and having hallucinations, and was the cause of his best friend losing an arm and a leg, was the cause of an epidemic which almost brought about his new destruction of his new home. Yeah, Snake and him sit civilly, very civil-like, in a jeep while continuing their conversation. And thus ensues the most awkward car ride ever. Because I used the wrong word. It's not really a conversation, it's more like a monologue, because again, Snake says absolutely nothing. Anyways, Skullface continues with his speech. He said that Zero's whole plan, as controlling and authoritarian as it was, had the purpose of uniting America and the entire world. Zero thought this was the boss's will. However, Skullface believed that he interpreted her will wrong, just like everybody in this freaking series. He understands the pain of losing his mother tongue and everything else that defined him, unlike Zero, whose mother tongue had been English since the day he was born. And somehow this helps him understand the boss's will. Skullface explains how when he was a child, his village was raided by foreign soldiers who tore him from his people and forced him to speak their language. This process continued multiple times with different nations, and with each nation he learned different languages, and with each change in language he himself changed. His thoughts, personality, and even how he saw right and wrong. He explained this experience as being invaded by words. He believes that he has lost his whole past and that all he has left is his future, and his future would be revenge. And his revenge would rain down on language itself. But then he thought that it should instead rain down on Zero himself, the man who tried to use language as his main weapon of control. He goes on with more dramatic rantings that honestly don't make much sense. I mean, as I type this, I still don't understand how this connects to the boss's will at all. The whole point of his speech is he lost his past, felt like it was destroyed by all the languages and cultures that were implanted and forced in and out of him, and because words and cultures are essentially Zero's form of control, he wants revenge on Zero and language itself. Seems legit. Skullface says in the end that the main language used in Zero's control would be English. At this point, he brings up a container with 3 parasite containers, only 2 being currently used. He shows Snake the 2 parasite samples and tells him,
The final parasites. It knows English.
With this and all his other parasites, he intends to quote-unquote rid the world of infestation, meaning rid the world of language itself. And he says,
Sans lingua franca, the world will be torn asunder, and then it shall be free.
Sans lingua franca, meaning without a common tongue. He believes this will free the world from Zero. So his goal is not an ethnic cleanser. His goal is to free the world from Cypher. Gotta say, not the most evil goal. Cypher does seem scaringly Illuminati-ish. However, a less chaotic approach would probably be better. Anyways, Sins of the Father starts playing as Skullface explains that the world will create a new lingua franca, or common tongue. This lingua franca would be the language of nukes, which would explain why he wants every nation and militia group to have nuclear power. Knowing that every nation has nuclear power, he believes he will form the ultimate form of deterrence. People will be forced to recognize their neighbors. Unable to speak, they will swallow their pain and hate, and the world will become as one. Skullface and Snake finally make it to where Sahelanthropus is, which is exactly where it was the first time, inside the cave makeshift lab place where we found Huey. This whole mission has seemed like a complete waste of time, to be honest. But whatever, Snake gets off of the jeep and walks towards Sahelanthropus with Skullface. The helicopter in which the rest of Snake's team is in is shown to be nearby, ready to back Snake up. At this point, Skullface begins to tell Snake about how demons exist in the world. He says that, unlike Snake, vengeance is all he has. He being later revealed to be the Man on Fire. He says that just how Snake lives because of Skullface, I'm guessing he means that he is driven by his need for revenge by Skullface.
He lives because of you.
Which would imply that the Man on Fire is someone who would want revenge against Snake. At this point, your little buddy, Doctor Who's empty child, appears, and under him is the Man on Fire. Snake is pushed forward by Skullface's soldiers, not letting him stay back from the Man on Fire. So Snake slowly approaches him. The Man on Fire then walks towards Snake, and just like every other time, Snake just stands there. He just stands there. I really don't know why he does this, but he's always saved by something. This time around, he's saved by the fact that, just like in the Devil's House, the floating kid gets distracted by something, and the Man on Fire freezes. So, if it wasn't obvious, it seems like the floating kid has something to do with the Man on Fire. His fire slowly dissipates as the floating kid starts to fly towards the roof, where Snake backup helicopter is. Then he turns around and heads towards Sahelanthropus. The Man on Fire starts moving again, but this time towards Sahelanthropus' moving platform, which ends up crushing him. Skullface is left speechless, as he has no idea what's going on either. Then Sahelanthropus itself starts to move, and there we see who Skullface's smartest soldier is.
Oh, hell no!
At this point, Skullface is overwhelmed by confusion as to what's going on, and all he can say is, as his men drag him away. Sahelanthropus starts to wreak havoc in the lab hangar, killing every soldier that isn't smart enough to run away, and finally turning his attention solely to Snake, roaring in his face, revealing that there is no driver inside. To be continued.